Today on the newscast, as Israel successfully tests its long-range missile defense system, we're joined by the man known as the father of Israel's missile defense. Plus, new details on that major Iranian-backed terror attack against the United Arab Emirates. That's coming up. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. As you can see, we have a slightly different look today here on our Watchman set. Our studio is in the middle of getting renovated. We think you're going to love the new look. We'll debut it here either later this week or early next week, so stay tuned for that. It's going to look great here on the Watchman Newscast set. In the meantime, hey, we've got a lot to discuss when it comes to the world's most volatile and pivotal region, the Middle East. Today, Tuesday, January 18th, Israel successfully tested its Arrow 3 long-range missile defense system. Now, of course, Israel has the Iron Dome missile defense system, which you've seen up close here on the Watchman Newscast. That is focused mainly on short-range missiles, oftentimes, of course, used against Hamas and Islamic Jihad missiles coming out of Gaza. Then Israel has the David's Sling missile defense system, which is focused on mid-range missiles, but the Arrow system, which was tested today, is focused on long-range ballistic missiles. And no coincidence, folks, the timing of this test, Iran, over the past few weeks, has conducted several long-range ballistic missile tests. Now, for today's test, Israel shot down 2 projectiles with the Arrow 3 system. The test was conducted in central Israel, and by all accounts, Israel Defense Forces officials say, and the Defense Minister Benny Gantz says, this was a great success. But the big story here, folks, again, timing no coincidence. This was clearly a message to the Iranian regime and that Iranian axis that we've been talking a whole lot here about on the newscast. Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, and those Shia militias in Syria and Iraq, which surround Israel right now with a ring of fire armed to the teeth with thousands, tens of thousands of ballistic missiles and attack drones, which brings us to yesterday's major attack against the capital city of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi. Now, we dug into this on yesterday's newscast. If you missed it, you can check it out here in our archives. New details emerging about this attack. We reported yesterday here on the newscast that it was explosive-packed attack drones that targeted sites in Abu Dhabi. The Houthis, that Yemen-based, Iran-backed terror group, claimed responsibility immediately for this attack against the United Arab Emirates. We knew that it involved drones. We knew that 3 people were killed, 2 Indian nationals and a Pakistani national. I assume they were guest workers working there in the UAE. And we knew 6 people were wounded. Now we're learning more about how this attack was carried out. It also reportedly involved ballistic missiles. Now, folks, this should be no surprise. We've talked about that hybrid model that the Houthis have used so effectively against Saudi Arabia. Attack drones combined with ballistic missiles. Now it appears that is exactly the model they used yesterday in this attack on Abu Dhabi. We are also learning that the Houthis intentionally targeted oil facilities in Abu Dhabi. We told you yesterday that 3 oil tankers were ignited in this attack. Look no further. The effects of this, folks, the global ramifications of this kind of attack, look no further than September 2019, where we had a similar attack against a major oil processing facility in Saudi Arabia, which for several hours shut down a good chunk of the world's oil supply. So, as we like to tell you here on the newscast, what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. And if the oil and gas supply is disrupted, we will all feel that around the world, no matter where we live. So it's a very troubling thing to see the Iranian axis intentionally target oil processing facilities. Now, the UAE says they reserve the right to strike back against the Houthis, and we have seen already this Saudi-led coalition, which includes the UAE and which has been at war with the Houthis since 2015. They are already conducting airstrikes against Houthi positions in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a in the wake of yesterday's attack on the UAE. So that is going to escalate, folks, even further, it looks like, in the days and weeks to come. Not only that, very important story today here as well, with Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett issuing a statement vowing cooperation across the board with the UAE in the wake of this attack against that Iranian axis. Folks, we said it yesterday, it's amazing how the prophetic chess pieces are lining up on the board, and we have the clear dividing line now. Israel and the Sunni Arab nations, the Abraham Accords nations, like the UAE, like Bahrain, like Morocco, also Jordan and Egypt and Saudi Arabia, they're on one side. On the other side is the Iranian regime, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and those Shia militias in Syria and Iraq, and of course the Assad regime in Syria. I mentioned yesterday that it's almost like God is setting up a situation where we have the wheat and the tares, the sheep and the goats when it comes to nations, the Sunni Arab nations clearly lining up alongside God's land, the land of Israel. Fascinating times in the world's most complex region, but here on the newscast, we try to break it down for you in a way that is easy to understand and let you know how this affects you, again, no matter where you live. Now, we're talking about the Arrow missile defense system, the Houthis, Iran's Ring of Fire, so I can't think of a better man to talk to than Uzi Rubin. He's the man known as the father of Israel's missile defense system. He's a fellow at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security, a foremost expert on missile defense. I sat down with him recently for the Watchman TV show on TBN in Jerusalem to get his take on Israel's missile defense system and why it's so important to stopping that Iranian onslaught. Take a look. You saw this coming. I mean, for well over a decade previous, you were saying, look, we need a robust missile defense system. Tell us now, Dr. Rubin, the strength of Hamas and Hezbollah when it comes to those rocket and missile arsenals. Hamas is one thing, but Hezbollah seems like another level of danger.
They are reputed to have about stockpile of about 150,000 rockets, which is an amazing stockpile. I don't think any country in the world, any regular government in the world, has a stockpile of so many rockets.
One of the most well-armed forces in the entire region, I would think.
In this particular kind of weapon, they have to hide the critical path in the production line. If they don't hide it, we destroy it.
It seems like the Iranian regime, the head of the snake in Tehran, has a grand strategy to surround Israel with a ring of fire.
So their public policy now is not to smuggle weapons, just to smuggle materials, key materials and components, but to educate their proxies to make their own weapons. The Houthis are already making their own UAVs. The UAVs were designed in Iran. They design them, they test them, they fly them, and then they give the blueprint to the local industry. In the case of Hamas, it's even more complicated. What they do, they take piping that they are imported legally and use it as rocket bodies. Yeah. And
all that international.
With this know-how and with some key facilities that they smuggled in, they gave them the opportunity to build a rocket industry of their own. Now, actually, they don't smuggle anything. They mostly what they do, rockets they do, are based on materials bought legally from Israel.
Very interesting. The strategy seems to be, in the next war, to overwhelm Israel on multiple fronts. We had obviously a single front war here in Gaza. Hezbollah did not get involved. How does Iron Dome, David's Sling, the Arrow missile defense system, a multi-tiered system which Israel has, how does it contend with rockets coming from several different directions, north, south, from Gaza, from Lebanon?
No technical.
Can it be overwhelmed?
Every system can be overwhelmed. There is no system that cannot be overwhelmed. It's a matter of number.
Right.
And as you say, this is a race. You have to be at least half a step ahead of the game all the time. So our missile shield is not completed. It's still being built. Notice that now Iron Dome is shooting down UAVs too.
Yes. And Iron Dome is deployed at sea as well now.
It's deployed at sea. It shoots down UAVs.
Folks, Dr. Uzi Rubin is a fascinating guy, brilliant. You can check him out at the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. In the meantime, before we go, 2 quick programming notes here on the newscast. Number 1, Amir Sarfati of Behold Israel will be here on the Watchman Newscast this Thursday, January 20th. Now, I know we have a lot of Amir and Behold Israel fans out there, including yours truly. We love the cutting-edge work he's doing on the Middle East, on the prophetic side of things. In particular, Amir will be joining us here for a special episode of The Watchman this Thursday, January 20th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It will debut right here on our Watchman YouTube channel. Do not miss it this Thursday, January 20th. Amir Sarfati of Behold Israel right here. While you're at it, be sure to visit Amir's great channel, Behold Israel, and subscribe. In the meantime, thanks so much for joining us here on the Watchman Newscast. Until tomorrow, until the live stream, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.